Hello everyone, Revan619 here. I hope you're all having a great day, and I'm finally covering my Officer, Commissar, Master Tactician build. On this one I have opted for a Hive World, but Hive World is not the only option you can pick. You can easily do Fortress World or Imperial World, but because I'm going for Officer Buffer, Hive World was something that I was found very useful throughout the entirety of the game. Especially when you have weapons like the anti-vehicle revolver that you can do a full 6-round burst. Every single burst, no matter what's going on there, and because of your natural armor pen increase, we've got 60% armor pen coming in on these shots. So yeah, six round rate of fire with that is quite good. There are a few little things that we can do very interestingly with the tactics here. As an Officer Commissar, we are a heavy buffer that also shoots allies. As a Master Tactician, we're also a heavy buffer, but we also have the extra effect that we can become very strong at supporting ally damage as well as our own damage. So there are other ways that we can also use this. So the Commissar boots, we can actually sparsely put out buffs to allies in the late game to generate movement. So say we do a pistol burst and there's nothing we can get to shoot anything, we can then throw a buff to an ally, and yes, we gain MP. So as soon as we do that, we can then move. So we can voice of command, move, shoot. We can then move, and then we can move an ally, and then we can move again and shoot. We can then air of authority an ally, then we can get some more MP and move again. So it's very good to even that out on how you do that. Naturally, the Commissar cap is going to be goated here because this cap entirely replaces the Noble Origin to the point that you don't need to do it. There are some very interesting little things that we can do here. So you can use the Chartist Pendant to scale Law Imperium from our Fellowship. By doing so, that opens access to the Breacher's Armor and the St. Cognatius' Scriptures, so we can really stack armor in the early and mid game, so we can get a lot out of that. You can even use things like the pair holsters, which is very good for attack economy going on early, especially because you can get something like the quick firing las pistol that will allow you to do a 1 AP burst, likely get a critical, and then allow you to get a 0 AP full burst from your other weapon in your offhand with dual weapon fighting. You can use the deflection gloves early game, so you can get a parry, so you can be up in melee, so you can get away from using a sword and pistol and then go straight into double pistols. And then towards the late game, once you also become a heavy damage dealer, you'll probably swap over something like the gloves of rapid escalation in Act 3. You can use the Von Valancius cloak or tactical backpack, or even the Temperis Carapace elite backpack, depending on which pistols you're using. But this is going to be down more to you. You can swap and change and choose other things. The only reason I'm using the tactical backpack is because it gave an extra rate of fire to basically all of our guns here. One thing I'm not doing, your secondary set, for the early and mid game, you're going to want the lowest damage solid projectile pistol here, because whilst you ignore your ally stats when you buff them, having the lowest damage possible will be the best, but by Act 5, chances are you're going to have an array of very high damage pistols, so that's not really going to be an option, but that won't be an issue for Acts 1 to 4. Other things to consider is going to be that without decisive response, you're just going to be a buffer or a little bit of support damage. As you get more AP, you tend to do both. This actually comes online as a support and damage much quicker than Jay does, because Jay doesn't have access to decisive response in her tier 1. This means that you are uniquely potent at being a buffer / off damage dealer, and the damage you can do is quite impressive. Whilst we get our damage talents like degraded defense much later, it is because at the end of the day we are a support build as a Commissar. If you wanted to go in for damage earlier, then I highly suggest swapping over to Soldier Arc Militant. To give an overview of the build that we're going to be making here, the Commissar gets a few unique things. With his pistols, he gets a unique damage buff that comes from being a Commissar called Iconic Sidearm. What this does is, shots with the pistol in their primary hand deal damage based on the 2x the ballistic skill of the Commissar, and you also get dodge reduction based on the Commissar's Fellowship bonus, as well as getting extra critical hit chance. So this is going to power you up quite nicely, and when you receive buffs from allies, that will also be efficient to use for coming back to yourself as a support, where you can massively stack turns. The unique ability you get is once per 2 rounds. Originally it was once per combat, but I managed to convince the devs to change this in 1.5 testing, which is the Commissar shoots an allied character with the pistol equipped in their primary hand, dealing 211% of the weapon's damage. This shot ignores armor and deflection and always hits, and if that ally is Xenos, it always criticals hits, and if that ally remains in combat, they gain the all cost effect for 1 turn. If the ally falls unconscious, the entire party gets it. This technically will last until you've come back around to your ally twice. So if you shoot an ally with this, they'll get their turn, it'll come back around to them, and they can often get their turn again, and you can stack multiple extra turns. So you do get quite a bit of usage out of this. As you can see here, it will give extra fellowship bonus damage, it gets Commissar's bonus to dodge and parry, and the Commissar's coercion to all stats. And it does come in quite high. If you look at some of these numbers, so they're going to deal 80% more damage, they're going to gain 80% dodge and parry, and they'll get 21 to all stats, and that will be doubled if you hit them in the back. So this is an incredibly potent buff, especially when you're using stuff like summary execution. Now, the way that this works is voice of command will give your fellowship to allies to buff them. You will then be able to give them extra turns with AP and MP based on bring it down. You'll be able to move them around freely with giving them extra MP with move. You'll be able to buff their resolve based on your resolve, and your resolve is going to be really high being a hive welder. It's exceptionally high. So this is going to mean that you're going to have more access to heroic turns, and you'll also be able to give your allies additional turns, which is going to be very strong. Moving on into your tier 2, because of the way the upgrades, even though you're going to be able to use Finest Hour, once per round, you're also going to be able to use Orchestrated Firestorm, which will allow all of your ally team that have line of sight to do a full burst attack, if at all they can do possible. This will even enable Cassia to use Lidless Stare, and your allies will try to dodge it as it comes in with the correct upgrades. The way that your main mechanics are going to work here is press the advantage is you gain stacks of tactical advantage when there's resolve being engaged, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put onto your main damage dealer Linchpin, which is they will gain resolve per the number of stacks of tactical advantage you have, and as you gain momentum it will generate stacks for the master tactician. You'll use Inspire to get extra damage based on the number of stacks, so you can put them onto allies, and then you can use Fervor to also put it onto yourself. The reason you want to put it onto yourself is that means both you and your ally can build up damage and, well, stacks for it. You'll be able to take other abilities later, like as I did in Exemplar, where I've taken on Strong Point, which is a way that I can give extra wounds to an ally. This is for the late game. I want to give allies temporary HP, so when I shoot them, I don't kill them, so I can buff them. Early game, you don't need to worry about that too much. I also take in like Take Aim here, so I can increase our allies' next attack, but it's less of a priority. And the side objective is a way that you can help get extra damage to a boss, so it's very useful to go in. But that's going to be sort of the way that the mechanic works. You're going to go in, early game, you're just going to buff an ally, you're going to give them an extra turn, they're going to shoot, and then maybe you'll get a shot. If they have enough temporary HP and you have a low enough damage pistol, you'll also at all costs them to get extra damage. There are many ways to generate temporary HP that I've shown in all of my videos, stuff like Invigorating Resolve, Relished Anguish, the abilities that of ourselves that we're going to cover in this video, as well as other methods which you'll see, say, the Warrior's ability. So there are lots of ways to gain temporary HP to get safe buffs in on your allies. In the mid game, you'll be able to choose to buff yourself with Linchpin and Inspire, do a bit of damage, use stuff like the Commissar's Boots to then buff allies for 0 AP to get additional movement to keep on going and battling, and once you've tired yourself out and you're getting close to being out of AP, you can then give an extra turn to an ally to get them going, and then potentially they might even generate a Finest Hour, so you can get a combat turn going very quickly. Alternatively, you could even buff Cassia, your other officer, to then Finest Hour yourself to give yourself a huge combat turn. So this is incredibly powerful. Once you see this in play and as it develops, you're going to really see what I said. So I'm going to show you part of an encounter for Act 1, then I'm going to explain the Act 1 talents, an encounter for Act 2, explain the Act 2 talents, then an encounter for Endgame, and then go through the Exemplar. So I hope that the structure of this video is going to be a lot more informative to explain how to play the build, and like I said, there are other variants on the spreadsheet, so if you wanted to do a warrior or a soldier version, that's there, and I've done a Commissar video previously to help understand how to customize it to your own playstyle. So let's get into that. Hello everyone, Revan619 here, and this is going to be me showing off a combat encounter for how to play the Officer Commissar. Now this was surprising to me that this was what people had requested to see, and not actually going for one of the damage options, so I honestly thought that that would be the go-to. But we're going to talk about how to best use this, and I'm going to talk through some of the setups of the encounter. Now, the way I initially position is to have my team all within a 5 cells of A-Blood, so when I activate Brace for Impact, I can cover the whole team and give everyone that sort of boost to their deflection, because it's going to be very helpful when not getting caught by stray bullets, and then I can actually better send in A-Blood to be positioned to get that initial hit on enemies, and obviously get his abilities up, like his Endure, and with that up, he's going to be good to set up for the team. Cassia is one who tends to often go first because of her setup for being a high perception based character, and I do try to go into Grand Strategist first. Now the Commissar, I'm not going to do that, but we're not actually at that level because we're still in the Officer Tier 1. The version that I'm going to be showing today is going to be a Hive World Commissar, but you could very easily build him into a Fellowship based one. Now one thing you're going to want to do is when you use Furious Recital, you're going to make sure you don't want your Commissar within 5 cells, because if he is, it will actually boost the damage of his at all cost. So yes, you're going to make sure you're going to want him not in that zone there, but you do want characters like Abelard in there. So as you can see, I am furiously checking here, hoping that I am not within range, but I am a little bit scared, so I'm actually going to do it back here.
As the Emperor commands, I act.
Yes, and now I'm just going to hope that Abelard was not in that range.
I'll do it. God, Emperor.
Now, as it comes for turn initiative, yes, my Commissar has actually gone a little bit late, and unfortunately this is because RNG is terribly designed in this game. It seems to be like a D100 plus half initiative plus half perception. It's really not normalized at all. I really hope that is something they fix in Dark Heresy. But this is why Grand Strategist is so valuable, and why people will often build for Grand Strategist to enable always going first. Because, yeah, the strength of going first means that you can make sure your buffers get into play straight away. And by having your buffers in play right away, that means that you're going to greatly benefit from the fact that everyone's going to be buffed up during the normal gameplay.
Though I gave
So one of the other things that's going to be important is making sure you have the right angles so you can use at all costs, because you want to be hitting allies from behind, which often means that you're going to need to move their positioning to be able to get the best use out of them. So for Abelard here, I'm actually going to take him a step forward to move him so his back is now to me. Move is also very good for getting people into the right positions. So now I can go for out course. So you want to hit the back because you want to always get that double boost, and you want to be very careful that, like I said, you didn't get Litany of Hatred. And now because we've hit Abelard with at all costs and we have hit him in the back, as you can see, we've got a plus 17 coming in here. So this it makes his stats absolutely exceptional. Now he's already received his boost here, so ideally we want to be able to boost someone else to then be able to give him further increases. Yeah, so just making sure that I wasn't going to blast Cassia.
I'll do it.
Now for my Commissar, I'm actually going to move him into a slightly better full cover position, but I've managed to buff, give an extra turn to allies, and go from there. So the sort of things you're going to want to do is Voice of Command is very important to get that initial buff for one round. Lasting Impression means you'll keep half bonuses past that first round, but now that once characters have Lasting Impressions, that means you don't need line of sight for move, bring it down, or even stuff like Air of Authority, because as long as they've got that Voice of Command, they've got it on there. Air of Authority is going to be very good for increasing allies' resolve based on my Commissar's resolve, because my Commissar has very high resolve. When he's next to allies, he boosts them, so you'll see that coming in, but his actual shots that he's then getting, you can give drastic boosts to allies, as you can see here, and even to Abelard. Now there is a slight bug that you're going to notice here for Pascal, which is area attacks don't consume exploits, but they do get the Analyze boost. So yeah, do keep that in mind, that when using area attacks, that you are going to be able to take advantage of that and then be able to do stuff like brilliant analysis. So the team's in a very good position. We've managed to get Litany of Hatred up, which is going to be on until Argenta's turn, which means that if we give someone else an extra turn before Argenta, they can actually still benefit from that. So it's actually going to be optimal here for Cassia to bring it down to Abelard again. And it also means that now we can actually give further buffs out to different allies. So in this scenario, I can actually then buff Pascal. And then I can, like I said, because of the line of sight, so we'll see this with my soldier as well, I can actually give Abelard an extra turn, even though he wasn't in the correct line of sight positioning for it. And he can still do very high damage, because he's benefiting from the extra damage that we're seeing from the Commissars at all costs still. And this will last until we come back around to the Commissar. Now, I would explain a little bit more about why I'm positioning Cassia, but we're going to focus more on the Commissar here. So in this battle, we are being joined by the Adeptus Arbites. But ideally, yes, you want to get voice command to keep your ally stats up. This will increase their damage, their dodges, and all their other stats and how you build into them. Officers enable your party to do what they do more and better. And by doing so, yeah, you're going to be able to get a lot more from the team. So in this scenario, to try and maximize our AP usage, we're actually going to be taking a burst fire on this enemy, not given rapid fire, because we want to then be able to use running gun to get to cover and take another shot. This scenario, I'm going to be going for the shotgun. Because if we knock that enemy down, it will also skip his turn, and we can try and save that firearm mastery for another turn, but we could potentially lose momentum. If I can save that for Capella, that would be good. If my Commissar was going first, ideally he would be the one to get it. We'll have to see where the sniper goes, because as long as he doesn't hit our team, doesn't affect our momentum, because of the extra resolve gain that we're seeing because of how the Commissar's throwing up, we've actually got a very good chance to keep that up. Now the other issue is for Cabela to be able to move, I can potentially be losing movement by taking self-damage.
As on my death is a blessing.
So we're looking quite good, but we need to be able to get into range to be able to use
Death comes in silence.
our death warps.
Let your soul be purged.
Ideally we wanted to hit that enemy. But Death Waltz in itself is a fantastic ability, and it will give us multiple charges of Death from Above.
The other side awaits.
And by being able to do that, we can now finally get to the sniper, which was actually our intended target.
I shall not fail. As the tenets demand.
Beautiful.
No pleasure.
Now, we could try to push these enemies, but I'm assuming they're going to go for the Adeptus Arbites rather than Cabela, but we'll have to see.
Unpleasant.
And then we can use Abelard, who's going to have lost the at all cost buff, but he's still going to have half from lasting impression. Oh, actually, no, at all costs is going to last until the end of this turn. So essentially, you get 2 turns on it, on the character. That's actually better than I was assuming at first.
I took care of this one.
So yeah, at all costs was doing a little bit more for us. But as you can see, I can still move Abelard, even though I don't have line of sight. But because he's already taken an extra turn, we don't really want to do that there. We can use that to better position Argenta to then take an extra turn to shoot into these enemies.
Suits my purposes.
As the Emperor commands, I act. Rejoice in battle!
Which knocks down the Rebel Agitator. And the Rebel Agitators are the enemies you want to kill the most, because they're the ones that can actually prime and proc up a lot of nonsense from other party members. But as you can see, even though our Commissar is all the way at the back and mostly out of combat, he is still able to support the team and keep into an ideal position for it. And at this time, no one else to buff that's there, but you can buff other officers like Cassia, who will now receive all those benefits, and you'll be seeing that for her for the rest of the combat. So she's going to still keep that lasting impression, and even once those buffs pass, if we look back at Abelard, lasting impression is still going to be given half the buffs there. And that means, yeah, by next turn we'll be able to use the Commissars at all costs again, if the combat were to last that long. Yeah, Plato and Solomon are clearing up. After looking at that combat, let's sort of go through what we're doing here. So in the early Act 1, you're mostly going to be a buffer and you're not actually going to be too upfront doing too many attacks, and it's going to be quite rare that you're going to be getting involved in the combat yourself, though you are equipped to do it and even to parry by having a melee weapon in the early game. Voice command is going to be your main way of buffing, and it's going to be what the officer is primarily doing. Once we get into decisive response, we'll get a lot more use out of this, but what is most important is we combine this with lasting impression to really go the extra mile. The skills are going to come in with using coercion, because the reason we're going to want coercion is that's going to be what buffs the at all costs. So this is going to be your main one, and with your second one going to be an open to a choice. Bring it down is going to be how your officer gives extra turns, and it's going to be sort of the main gameplay here, and it's going to be incredibly useful for one turn in the game. This is why officer is probably the most OP class in the game, because of the extra turn economy and breaking. Yes, blade dance might be the primary attack class, but officer is what enables everything to do it. Finest Hour, again, one of the best abilities in the game, because you grant an ally a full extra turn with full AP and MP, and during their extra turn there's no attack limit. There is, it's 12, but like on paper there's no attack limit. Lasting impression, half bonuses granted by voice command remain until the end of combat, and this means that the allies will still count as being under the effects of voice command for later uses. So if they're out of your line of sight, you can still use move, 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 and you can still use bring it down, which is very, very strong. Ballistic skill is going to be important for being a gunner, so we do go into that first. Summary execution is going to be the strongest upgrade to at all costs. It's just for no extra negatives, you just do double if you shoot them in the back. Decisive response is the MVP. This is what J needs to compete with this build. This is the whole reason why this build is just infinitely superior than using J, because the first time the officer uses voice command will bring it down. It costs 1 AP less each, so that means voice command will be 0 AP and bring it down will be 1 AP. Bliss skill to keep him going. Now, this is optional. I like move, move, move because it enables so much of my gameplay and my strategies. If you don't want to use move, 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 do switch this to a different one, but I highly recommend it. Weapon personalization, because we're a hive world, this is going to be very useful because the extra rate of fire, the extra armor pen, the extra damage, and the less recoil. I just find it fantastic, especially with the Commissar's pistol bonuses. Focus, very important, because not only do you buff allies' bliss skill, you also buff their perception. This will come in a lot more later, and it will be very useful, because whenever the officer uses an ability on ally, that ally gains bonus to their perception and bliss skill equal to 7. These bonuses stack, but half the stacks rounded up are lost at the target's end turn. Multiple officer abilities will stack this. Coercion, yep, we're going to take some more of that. Now, the first Finest Hour upgrade is very important. It's Finest Hour up 1. This makes all extra turn abilities cost minus 1 AP less. If your allies also use items like Flash, they can get another minus 2. So you can stack minus 3 AP cost from a lot of abilities. Very useful for helping allies like Pascal. Law Imperium is what I go into, and it's going to be because of the Charter's Pendant, so I can do Law Imperium from Fellowship, and there's lots of items to abuse that. More Fellowship coming in. Now, Steel Resolve, another optional one. I like to resolve stack, so I like to get as many extra turns as possible, and because Hive World and Officer and Commissar have very high resolve and use a lot of abilities from it, I like this one. You could put in Be Vigilant instead, so you can start buffing allies' weapon skill, but I find that less of a priority than Steel Resolve. Fellowship, Air Authority, a big one. So the officer increases an ally's resolve by, let's get that exact number. It's the 2 plus the officer's resolve divided by 3. If the target's under the effect of voice command, they will start their next turn with 1 additional action point. So that's also quite useful. And that does seem to stack on Finest Hour. Characteristic training perception. We do need to get perception because we're going to be engaging in combat ourselves. And this will also help with initiative because we're not going into grand strategists. Inspiring Speech is another useful one. Air Authority immediately gains momentum equal to the target's resolve. And because we're passing a lot of resolve, yes, very, very strong, because that means we're going to get closer to getting heroic acts, especially after using Bring It Down. More Law Imperium, more Perception. I then get Let Them Know Fair. Whilst the Commissar is adjacent to an enemy, their allies gain 6 resolve. If there are no creatures in a 2-cell radius, the Commissar gains 6 resolve. So this is going to be based around the Commissar's Fellowship bonus, and that's going to also stack with the Hive World ability. I take Finest Hour 1, so during their extra turn, the target does 33% damage, and until the end of combat, that target gains the effective voice command, and that can stack with Lasting Impression. Some people have said that one thing that you can do if you are using unsanctioned psychers like Idra is you can use Finest Hour Upgrade 2, and it's the only way to stop her from dying. But that's only for one round, so I don't recommend that. I much prefer the extra 33% damage and being able to double stack extra buffs. But this is going to be how we'll play in Act 1. You've seen a little bit of combat, and your turn's going to be basically 0 AP voice, 1 AP extra turn, and then you're going to probably shoot. And that's going to be it. And if you want to get extra buffs in, you've got Air of Authority. So depending on how your AP management is with that initial 4 AP, 1 AP to do nothing, to basically give them extra turns, 2 AP to give them an extra turn, and as well as 2 buffs here. So that is 2 ways that you're going to be stacking focus there. So you've still got 2 AP for a burst fire. And it's, so early Act 1 that you don't need 2 guns, so you will have like an offhand melee weapon, so you can also parry a little bit and get a little bit more parry chance, but it's going to be quite flavorful. So that will, as I said, complete what your playstyle is going to be in Act 1. Now let's have a look at how the build's going to progress into Act 2 and Tier 2. As you come into Act 2, my officer Commissar progresses into a masked tactician who pairs very well with Cassia working as a grand strategist. Now, one of the things that I find very useful is that you can go into dual pistol because you get items like the deflection gloves. With the deflection gloves, you can allow yourself to parry and be a little bit more forward focusing. If you can get your hands on any agility gear, whilst it is helpful, you're not going to want to prioritize over, say, Argento or Cabela taking that. Items like the Chartist Pendant is going to be very useful to get some more fellowship and commerce, and also your Law Imperium based on your fellowship, which means you can open the gate to stuff like St. Cognatius' Scriptures and the Breacher's Armor if you really want to stack armor through the moon, which is something that I do on J, and then you can even use something like the Helm of Determination. However, I like to basically run the Commissar the same way you would give J, with the pair holsters and the portative manipulator. As you see, most of the gear I've got on here is going to be the same as J. And as before, I've got the extra rate of fire because of using a low damage, high rate of fire side protection in the main hand, with an offhand burst fire with more arm penetration in the offhand. In my secondary set, I've got the Negotiator pistol, which is for the DLC bonus of armor strip, but we don't shoot allies with this. And the single shot on this is bugged because it's actually a rifle single shot, meaning that we actually can't use this without all costs. So you're not going to accidentally do that, so don't worry about that. Though that is a bug that developers need to look at. And for some reason, the longer you're in the area, the more your FPS just absolutely tanks on the Heartless. Like, my god. But yes, let's get this combat going. And yes, I'm going to apologize now that it is going to be a little bit choppy. That's just unfortunately the Optus optimization in this area. Now, I could very well actually use my main character here as a damage dealer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some of the initial areas set up for my allies here, who are going to be making a somewhat aggressive forward push. But the other thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to give some extra turns to my Commissar. And I'm going to give him a little bit of dodge reduction because he's not going to be my main damage dealer. So I'm going to keep the over penetration more for, say, using for Argenta and Pascal. Though Argenta's probably going to move away from this alcove. And because of decisive response, we can very easily be throwing out these buffs to help with our allies, or we can be going for buffing ourselves. So I am going to use the 0 AP voice command just to get Abelard's defenses up now, but I'm also going to be setting up for a later turn. I'm actually going to linchpin myself, because if we can build up some stacks here for our Master Tactician, this is actually going to be quite useful. Ideally, we want to hit this group of enemies, and I don't really want to hit Abelard at the same time. So I'm actually going to position it to not shoot him, though his defenses are going to be so high it probably doesn't matter. But as you can see, we have procced Pair Holster, and Pair Holster is something that we can use quite a multiple number of times. So we can get that out to help out a little bit here, and we've still got some good AP coming in. So I'm actually going to reload both of that. Now, this is when I could actually, at all costs, try to buff Abelard, because now he's got some really high stats coming in here. We take that in, and he is going to benefit from that buff. Now, unfortunately, because of Dogmatic 2, we have set him on fire, But as you can see, he's now got some really good buffs coming in. So he's got at all costs adding a plus 15 there, as well as the voice of command adding plus 20. So by giving from Cassia to bring it down, we've been able to do some damage. We've been able to get ready for our later buffing turn, as well as setting up our defenses. So we've just had a really good initial turn there. And we can even be throwing out a little bit more extra damage. There are some high value targets we can get, and we can even do something like this here just to set up some cover, so those enemies are going to have to move up. Now, the enemies have completely ignored A-Blood and just run straight past it. This is why I say that tanking is not really something you need to worry all that much about, because, yeah, enemies don't really care about it in this game.
Shadows will see you down.
So that chap actually managed to block us quite nicely.
I feel nothing, fear nothing.
So I'm trying to get in as much damage as possible here with Cabela to take out this guy. And then we're going to try and move in on his other ally. Now, there's going to be a good amount of dots that we've got stacked up here. So I'm actually going to try and take him out.
As the tenants demand.
Wasn't able to do it, but one thing I can do is I can use acrobatic archery to get ourselves back into full cover before the enemies take their turn. But we have lost a companion with that initial push that they made. Potentially we could have tried to buff A-Blood to get off his taunting screen, but there's a good chance those enemies would have ignored him anyway. So now we've got A-Blood's turn, we can actually give up some party defences here. And then we're going to try and work out exactly where we're going to want to position ourselves to best utilise this. So I'm feeling going here with an area attack is going to be the best option. There's obviously those follow-up offhands, and yes, A-Blood has managed to clear that very nicely, and we can move him back into cover and get another good position here. Coming back to Argenta, because we've already used our at all costs, we don't have to worry about the Furious Recital buffing one of our allies. So I'm actually going to make a very aggressive Argenta push here, because we are in a really good position to do so. Let's make sure we get these kills. Very, very nice. And we've got a good group here as well.
I will bathe this battlefield in righteous fury.
I'll do it.
Wildfire, rapid fire.
Without deeds is worthless.
That's going to be some very dead dudes.
Escape the Emperor's judgment.
And we have cleared most of the encounter. We do have the snipers on the other side and one chap up here. But I am going to save the finest hour. So now that we've come back around, we could look to finish off the guy that's here, and we could actually use ourselves to do it, or we could buff an ally. So we do have some good options. We do have quite some good buffs coming in here. So yeah, we could actually go all in with our press advantage. Yeah, and as you can see, only one of our bullets hit, and we did 65, and we're the officer. So yeah, getting in some really good stuff there. Now, A-Blood we've already boosted, so we can actually move him and get him into range to finish off this last guy here. And even though we don't have line of sight on him, we can still apply officer buffs. We can't do our Master Tactician buffs this way, but we can get in the others.
I will do my duty. Target.
And yes, and some extraordinary damage coming in there from A-Blood. I am actually going to use this opportunity because whilst I have those allied buffs, I can use his heroic action to actually get around and clear these enemies.
Indeed. I took care of this one.
And whilst we're still benefiting from all the other ally buffs, it's just a really good time to do it.
You are target. Tried and tested tactics.
As you can see, this is the power of what officers enable you to do. It is absolutely extraordinary. And as you can see, the temporary wounds for A-Blood currently is through the roof. I've been able to put him into a very aggressive position here. Now, we are back around to Cassia, and because of everything we did, we've actually come back to have another finest hour. So we can pop on here, and then we can actually move Abelard up even more and have him go in and keep finishing this encounter. Yeah, our damage is just going to be going. And because of the previous use of Finest Hour, yeah, we've got some very good things here, and this is the last enemy. Because of that, we were able to push through and do the encounter very easily here. So the way some of these talents work, because I didn't explain all of them for our Master Tactician, is the two new abilities that we've picked up here is Linchpin. So the target's ally of the Master Tactician gains +1 resolve for every 5 stacks tactical advantage the Master Tactician has, but the Master Tactician loses half of those stacks tactical advantage rounded up. And because of the higher resolve that we're putting out, we're getting a lot more heroic actions, as you saw. We were able to get through quite a few there. And yeah, until the beginning of Master Tactician's next turn, the Master Tactician gains stacks tactical advantage 28% of the momentum the target gains instead of the usual 20%, which is pretty good. But we can also give damage buff stacks to our allies as well. And then, obviously, as you saw with my press the advantage, we can do additional damage ourselves and actually really push in and get some kills. So we've become an officer buffer, but a little bit of a hybrid into an attacker as well. And that's really what the benefit of having a Commissar is. A Commissar can be an offensive role that can use at all costs to have some buffs. Or you can be an incredibly powerful buffer that you can also still build it into a little bit of buff support. Like, many people will just build this into grand strategists, but I don't feel like that's going to be the best call to play. And the only misplay we had was Pascal was too far up, because operatives have no defense, because they kind of suck. As you can see, Master Tactician here is going to be changing the dynamic, but let's actually explain some of these mechanics. So the way Tactical Advantage works is the Master Tactician gains a special Tactical Advantage effect that allows them to empower their attacks. They gain +1 stack of this effect for every 5 momentum gained by themselves or their allies. The Master Tactician begins combat with a number of Tactical Advantage stacks equal to their Fellowship bonus. You don't need Fellowship bonus to use this, but it does help. The Master Tactician empowers their next attacks deal 4% additional damage for every stack of tactical advantage the Master Tactician has, and loses half of their stacks of tactical advantage rounded up when you click it. So you want to build up as much as you can. So the first ability is Linchpin. The target ally or the Master Tactician gains +1 resolve for every 5 stacks of tactical advantage the Master Tactician has, but the Master Tactician loses half their stacks of tactical advantage rounded up. This affects stacks and lasts until the end of combat. This affects stacks, by the way. Until the beginning of the Master Tactician's next turn, the Master Tactician gains stacks of tactical advantage equal to 31% of all momentum the target gains instead of the usual 20%. The next one is Reliance. The Linchpin now spends only a quarter of the tactical advantage stacks instead of half. Orchestrated Firestorm comes in. This one is going to be the Master Tactician selects a 3x3 zone on the battlefield. All allies, including the Master Tactician, that have line of sight to any enemies inside that selected zone make an immediate attack against a random enemy within this zone that they can target with their weapons. This is why Castigator is also pretty good at going into Master Tactician, by the way, from Arbiters. We then increase the AP, Bliss skill, and we get Joint Offensive. The Master Tactician gains +1 stack tactical advantage for every hit they score on enemies. Every hit. This is why Master Tactician benefits more from burst fire weapons than it does from other weapons. We then get Inspire. The Master Tactician gains 5% damage and 5% additional damage for every 10 stacks of their tactical advantage that the Master Tactician has, but the Master Tactician loses half of their tactical advantage stacks rounded up. This effect stacks and lasts until the end of combat. If the target uses a heroic attack before the beginning of the Master Tactician's next turn, they gain +25 momentum, so it's very, very, very good. Unwavering Motivation. The target of Inspire gains 5% additional damage for every 10 stacks of tactical advantage until the beginning of the Master Tactician's next turn. More Coercion. Fellowship. We also start getting into dual weapon combat because this is going to start being a thing, and as soon as you can get some low AP weapons, so you can use something like a burst fire pistol with a foe hammer early on. So the foe hammer will allow you on crits to proc pair holster, which will give you a 0 AP burst. So essentially you take a shotgun area attack and a burst fire for just 1 AP, so it's very cost efficient. Hidden Advantage will then come in. All the Master Tactician abilities work as if the Master Tactician has Fellowship bonus more stacks of tactical advantage. We then get Coercion, Fellowship. Orchestrate Firestorm 3 is a very good upgrade here, which is basically if our allies are able to make a burst attack using burst attack instead of single attack against enemies as part of Orchestrated Firestorm and the last volley until the beginning of the Master Tactician's turn, allies automatically dodge all friendly fire. So this is like getting the Astra Militarum Commander effect, and because you can with the next upgrade use it multiple times in combat as well as using it whilst you've used Finest Hour, you can really abuse the crap out of this. Like Cassia will use Lidless Stare if she has access to it, which is quite good. Against all odds, the Master Tactician begins combat with additional stacks tactical advantage equal to the number of enemies. Law Imperium, Agility. We then get 1 for the enemies, 2 for the traitors. This is giving us the iconic sidearm effect to pistols in either hand. We then get Fervor. So what's useful about this is the Master Tactician suffers direct damage equal to 20% of their maximum wounds, gives Master Tacticians resolve stacks of tactical advantage, and resets the cooldown of Linchpin, Inspire, and Strongpoint. To the end of the Master Tactician's turn, these abilities can only target the Master Tactician themselves. So what you can do is you can Linchpin and Inspire an ally further, and then Linchpin and Inspire yourself, and then do your normal rotation. Or you could Linchpin Inspire yourself further, then you could Inspire Linchpin yourself, and then you've got double the gain that you'll have when you're attacking enemies. So these are two very viable options that you can use for using this. So think about how you're going to want to use that rotation. Next, you'll get Dawn of Victory. Every critical hit scored by the Master Tactician grants momentum equal to resolve divided by 2, works up 3 times. So this is less potent than every hit we got, but the extra critical hits means that we are actually going to get an extra 3 stacks on that. But yes, going in with the previous ones, that's why, again, Burst Fire. Agility, Law Imperium, stacking the deck is another good one. Whenever the Master Tactician spends tactical advantage of stacks on abilities, the critical damage dealt by the Master Tactician increases by 1% for every stack. So spending it's also very, very, very good. We get Perception. We then get Motivation, which is coming in from the Commissar. The Commissar's MP is increased by 6. All allies starting their turn within a 2-cell radius around the Commissar also gain 6 MP. Once per round after the Commissar performs an attack with a pistol, they gain 5 MP. Does not stack. Yes, using an attack, blasting enemies to gain MP, move, blast more enemies, then give an ally a buff with the Commissar boots to move and then blast more enemies, and keep going like that. I didn't show that combination with the Commissar boots in that engagement because of the save files that I used. Those were currently on Jay and I couldn't be bothered to take them off of her. But yes, that is the best way to use that, and it's so good. Commissar is such a mobile pistol officer support. It's so damn strong. It's what I'm currently running through on the live stream. And yes, Orchestrate Firestorm Upgrade 2. Orchestrated Firestorm Last Volley can be used multiple times per combat, once per turn. Yeah, that means once per turn we can use this, and it means if we've already used Fine Sound, we swap a turn, then come back, we can still use Orchestrated Firestorm to stack them both without having something like the upgrade for Paradox Solve. So that's incredibly strong. Having said that, now let's look into what the gameplay is going to look like in Tier 3. Getting into Act 4, you can sometimes forget if you're meant to be an officer buffer or if you're actually the main damage dealer, and this is kind of what comes in with the Commissar. Now, it becomes very important that you use 2 weapon sets here, so you still want to have something that's going to have your low damage when you want to buff allies, because over in your main hand, you're probably going to be having something that's going to absolutely shred your team, which is, say, the anti-vehicle revolver here, which is going to have a 6-round burst with the current set that I have for my Commissar. And as you can see, like I said, I'm using the trick of building Law Imperium from Fellowship, because we can turn that into 20% armor here and another 23% armor here, so we can be a very strong frontline fighter. Yes, our dodge takes a hit going into medium, but it's not going to matter, especially the fact that we're going to be going first. And I've even dropped for the deflection to parry gloves because, yeah, I don't really care for damage all that much. So if we start the battle now, I can very much be the main damage dealer here. So if we have a look at our Commissar, we could buff allies, which is probably something we'll do after our turn has got going. But if I drop myself the Linchpin and the Inspire onto myself, then I'm going to pop on a Fervor, and yeah, we're probably going to be building up quite a bit here. So if we look at here, so the target gains 5% damage and 5% additional damage for every 10 stacks the Master Tactician has, but the Master Tactician loses half up to round it up. So this is going to increase as we use it. If I can also use Strongpoint here, so we can get 2 temporary wounds plus 1 additional temporary wound for allies. Yeah, for every 2 stacks tactical advantage. So we can actually pop this on ourselves to give ourselves some really strong defenses here. So we can make sure that we're going to be okay. And we can even, because I play Dogmatic, I can actually just choose to ignore enemies' stats here. And for the first burst, we're probably going to be coming in at a good old 1 AP. So if we have a look at what that's going to look like, I should be aware that I am actually going to lose movement here. So I do want to get into the right place. But because of motivation, I will get a little bit of movement back. But as you can see, we are just going to do some absolutely exquisite damage. And we've still got that offhand if we wanted to then go in and boost from another ally. And one of the other things that we can even do here is, say we buff Cassia, we can actually have Cassia then buff us back and then use that heroic turn that we just gained back on ourselves. So if we then, say, bring it down over to Cassia here, Cassia can then return the favor with buffing us back. She could even then set up some extra ways that we can gain some movement. So if we set this up here, and then set this up here, and set this up here, we can now move, and then Cassia can actually, as I said, return the favor to further buff us, and we could even build up a lot more extra stats with the Inquisitor's Tenant, and then we can bring another extra turn back upon ourselves. So now, if we have a look at what our stats are doing, we've got armor through the roof, dodge reduction and dodge are both absolutely through the roof. All of our damages is now incredibly high. We've gained ourselves some more movement here, and if we move around so we can take another burst fire on these enemies, because we built up quite a lot of stacks from our tactical advantage here, we're going to be seeing this come in quite well. And we're going to have... Oh, didn't mean to click the bug report. That's a weird place to just have that to click. But yes, so movement is going to be the initial issue. But like I said, we will be able to reposition ourselves once. And if I want to use our at all costs here, I can really do quite a little bit of here. So we can throw in at all costs and we can do ourselves a really big damage burst. So yeah, we're going to pick off some of those enemies. We can reload that here, we can bring in some more further to get even more. And then we can sort of reposition ourselves where we can keep going and blasting. And because of the Fine Style, we can just still be abusing the hell out of this anti-vehicle revolver. And yes, the damage, as you can see, is absolutely incredible. And we're doing 6-round rate of fires here, so... we're both the buffer and a exceptional damage dealer ourselves now. And we've still got, we can actually then finest our ourselves if we wanted to. So if we look up to Captain Wiz here, we've not got the best angle or even the best way to guarantee that we're going to be able to land all of these shots because of the extra range that we've got here. But yes, we built it in very, very easily. So our allies are then going to jump into the tank. The combat is then going to move to the next phase, but we are still considered as if we were in that round that just happened. So because of this, I can then look to my allies, and as I've shown before, I can buff Ulfa. We can't give him an extra turn because of where we currently are. What I can do is, if we take a little shot, I probably should have swapped my weapons there. I wasn't thinking about that. that was poor form of me. But yes, this will then come back to Cassia, who had just given an extra turn, but for some reason now the combat is counting this as an extra coming back. And to make up for shooting Ulfa, I can actually get a good position and then start trading some buffs over to him.
Done.
And because I'm already on the extra turn, I can't be giving him an extra turn, but I can be using this to then build up some more stacks ourselves, and then proc Finest Hour. And now Ulfa has my apologies because I didn't mean to shoot him in the back, but I accidentally did. But yeah, Ulfa is going to be seeing a lot of buffs coming in here from my at all costs, even though I didn't hit his back. But yes, his stats are going to be very high, and he's going to have very, very high everything coming in because of that. We can even be moving him around to be using his Go for the Throat, which is going to be resetting as we get kills. So yes, positioning Ulfa is never been easier than the time that we do this with having the extra Commissar. And that this is all before enemies have even had a chance to react, keep in mind. So without enemies even being able to take a turn, we have just freely trivialized the entire encounter, and we are just mopping up. And we're technically still on the very first turn, because we're going to be able to loop a lot more because of all of this. Essentially, we cleared the encounter, and this is going to be one where enemies are going to keep coming in until we break these things. It's a special mechanic of this encounter. But as you saw, when I used that all costs, I really should have swapped my pistols from my damage one to my non-damage set of pistols. But yeah, I wasn't really paying attention. Right, let's move all far away from here, because if I'm going to shoot at these chains, I don't want to exactly be under that myself.
Out of your bones. In disgrace. I will carve runes out of your bones. So wounds rain.
But yeah, we have an obscene amount of attack and action economy because of everything we're doing here. So even coming back to my Commissar,
Nothing I can't do.
who can still use his Orchestrate Firestorm, because I've taken the upgrade for it, everyone that's able to burst is going to burst when they can. So I've still got my at all costs here, but if I then pop this here, as you'll see, the whole party coming in to absolutely mess that guy up. And because of the quickfire las pistol, it doesn't matter having that offhand, because we are not really increasing the attack economy of that all that much. Then we come back through an extra turn, through an extra turn, through an extra turn, and then back to the actual turn where we should be. We haven't enabled the tank yet. But we are now still on Cassia, who... Well, these guys all had some extra turns put to it, but Alpha can technically have it repeated because of the way that the combat counter changed. He's technically not taken his extra turn here. So again, yeah, we're seeing a lot of turn stacking. Let's switch over to the heavy bolters so I can use it with wildfire. We'll use it with rapid fire. We're going to take some shots of this chain, which I really thought would have been finished there. Apparently Ulfa is missing, but okay, you can't melee it. If I come back to Cassia, she'll be able to finish the chain and actually finish the encounter. Or so I thought.
Here we go. See how the wolves succeed.
What is with this chain? I cannot seem to, for the life of me, take it out.
Is better than a warrior of the All-Father.
There we go. My goodness. Yes, the confusing events of sometimes how things work in these games. But as you can see, the setup is absolutely insane, and as you get into the later game, you become a heavy buffer as well as a heavy damage dealer. So, as you can see, we are now coming into Exemplar, and this build just gets crazy. We are an incredibly potent damage dealer and an incredibly potent support. And that test was without degraded defense, I'll have you know. So we don't get degraded defense till we're getting closer to the Urlon encounter, but I didn't want to keep showing and spoiling late game encounters, and to show more of the build in the early mid game, because people seem to think that my build's focused on the end game, when actually my build focused on the early game, because a lot of my builds I put together with either the intent to solo the game or to be picked up by anyone to get through unfair blind. So the first one we get into, Igvbal, I actually think is even more important on this one, to be able to be both a hybrid of offense and buff, but if you want to take Firebrand sooner to focus more on buffing, you can, but Igvbal I think coming in first, getting those additional 2 action points in that first turn is going to do a lot for you. We finally do get Be Vigilant. This will allow us to get some weapon skill when we give the effect of allies our buffs. but I don't think it quite stacks like Focus does. Early in the video I said it does, but reading it now, I don't think it does. Anyway, moving on. Coercion, we get logistical superiority whenever the Master Tactician or Master Tactician ally uses a consumable, item, grenade, or medkit, or reloads a weapon. The Master Tactician gains 2 stacks tactical advantage, so that works for you and allies. We get some more perception. Grenadier, very MVP, having an extra attack action that we can use to use ionized grenades to armor strip. Incredibly potent, very important for Act 3 as well. Take aim. This is going to be what allows your allies, if you haven't been heavily going into perception, to land their shots when it comes to Act 3. So yeah, the target's next text will ignore cover and have double the effective distance. Like, double the distance is also very good. It means that you don't lose half your ballistic skill regardless of being at your maximum distance. If they're under the effect voice command, the attack will ignore enemies block and dodge. So yes, very good for getting through shield. Additionally, the damage from the attack cannot be reduced below 63% for any reason. So yeah, more coercion. Firebrand will give us extra MP and AP when we give extra turns to allies. Undisputed advantage, yep, press the advantage ignores cover and dodge, so you're definitely going to be landing those shots. We get some fellowship. Steady, yep, we increase take aim, the next range attack, by 5%. This bonus is increased by 1% for each cell between the attacker and the target, so shooting from further away will also increase damage. Strong point's going to be very good to counteract your own at all cost damage that you're doing to allies to give temporary wounds. We get some more fellowship. Stronghold then comes in, so we actually give 2 allies temporary wounds. So if you've got someone using Malpain Shroud, they're going to very much love that. We get some camaraderie coming in here. This is going to be useful for some late game stuff. I would have liked to have taken this earlier for the Act 3 willpower test, but unfortunately I couldn't find somewhere to fit it. But some of the story events in Act 4, this means you're going to be using your fellowship set willpower for those tests to make sure you get through them. Law Imperium, yep, keep going with that. Eager subordinates, so this means on next turns our allies do another 15% extra damage on top of all the extra damage we already give them. Seize the initiative, because we'll have commanders chrono by this point. The officer and allies under the voice of command effect deal an additional 21% damage to enemies that have not yet acted. Yes, this only works with turn 1 hyper offensive. If you're not doing that, then do drop that. Law Imperium, we get some leaders assault, which is whenever the officer makes an attack, they gain 5 fellowship until the end of combat, and we can make a lot of attacks now, can't we? I've got 1 point to medicate. I definitely recommend getting that into there, just so you can use med packs if you do need to. Brink of Death is going to be very good. Master Tactician deals 12% more damage to targets that have less than 50% wounds, and heals 20% more wounds if target has less than 50% wounds. More Bliss skill, so we can increase our hit chance and critical chance. Commerce is an option. You don't need to take it. You can take medicate or you can take something else, but at this point in the game, you're not going to be using these 2 skill points very much. Most of your skill checks are already done. Degrade defense, huge power increase for damage. Yes, it means you're just going to be as potent as everyone else. Personal oversight's another good one. Whenever the officer grants an ally an action or an ability or an attack, that ally's resolve increase by +1 until the end of the officer's next turn. This effect stacks and is prolonged until the end of the officer's next turn each time it stacks. So it is pretty good. Not as important. You could take No Respite here earlier, but we're going to take it pretty soon anyway. So if you want to swap those 2 around, you can do. Personal involvement. Every enemy killed by the Master Tactician increases Master Tactician's resolve by +1 to the end of combat. Yeah, you're going to have so much resolve. More commerce, then yes, No Respite. We gain them +1 to their characteristics for every action we grant. We're taking some of these stuff that it might feel a bit late, but it's because we are focused on damage. We also get Fool the Emperor, so if we at all costs allies, they can get some of that missing health back as temporary HP when they attack. Sign Objective is going to be a way that we can help get some extra damage in against some allies, against a boss enemy, or even just a key target, as well as against more momentum. We get some more perception. Extermination, because we can do a higher number of attacks, as you saw. This is going to be something that can be quite useful. Primary Objective is another useful one, which is Sign Objective also makes the target suffer 7% more damage, and from any source to begin Master Tactician. And finally, we finish on some extra AP. So that's going to be how the build comes in. We're going to look at some extras and obviously some items, and we'll talk about that looking at the spreadsheet. But this is an incredibly powerful build, and I hope if you do like this, you do make sure to like the video, subscribe, share, comment, and send it around, because yes, I got involved with testing this. I helped push them to make some changes that just made all this possible, but all credit to the developers. They've done some fantastic work on this Origin, but it really highlights that we definitely need an extra brutal mode. So if you do the developer survey feedbacks, do ask for a difficulty increase. So if we take a little bit of a look at the spreadsheet, now I do have a key on the left here to talk about your abilities, skills, talents, contents, heroic actions, stats, so you can follow the color of the spreadsheet. Obviously, all variants, if you scroll to the right, you will see variants for the other origins, and you also see more origins as you go down. You can download this to get access to older versions for 1.4 and 1.3 if you're still playing on those patches. As I've previously said, I do have an Imperial World Soldier build. I also have a Hive World Warrior build, but you can change these to Imperial, Hive, fortress if you really wanted to, and you can customize these using the previous video I showed. I haven't actually put that too many options where you can change things, because I'm actually really happy with how this all came together. You are free to use this as a build skeleton and change anything you want to your own preferences, but I cannot obviously stand behind the effectiveness when you do make these changes, because even small changes can affect the whole gameplay of the build. But when it comes to items, I've put in gears to consider, and yes, a lot of these are some of my favorite gears, but they're not all in any particular order, so it's just stuff you'd consider. And I went over and showed you what I went through, but the ones I will highly recommend: Commissar's cap, because it entirely replaced Noble as an origin. Just by equipping that cap, you don't need Noble in the game anymore. Commissar boots, shockingly potent. I didn't realize how potent they were. Pistols that you could easily use, like Daredevil pistol, Bloody Mentor, anti-vehicle revolver. In your offhand, you're going to want to be looking at stuff like the quick-firing las pistol, the Marshot hot panless pistol, or the Bone Shatterer. And your weapon set, you can either have auto guns, las guns, snipers, or low damage pistol options for at all costs. So you saw that my pistol options did change between my two sets for my buffing ones to shoot my own ally, as well as the sets to use them for enemies. But yeah, that will complete the build. I hope you found this helpful, and do check out some of the live streams if you want to see some more gameplay. And also check out some of the companion builds, because I've covered them all now, and this is going to be the first of my origins. And next I'm going to be moving on to Astra Militarum Commander, and I'm going to be doing a poll on what variant people want to see. But I have everything from a Be Smart arc rifle version to go in Grand Strategist, because that one benefits from getting Grand Strategist more. I've got a Trench Strategist version, which is the same but using las rifles. I've got a Soldier version, which is again focusing on las rifles, but also use a Master Tactician. I've got a Fortress World, another one that goes in with heavy guns using Arc Militant, which is obviously pretty potent. I've got something called Dishonorable Discharge, which uses heavy Xenos weapons, so using the rune cannons, which is very similar to the build previously. I've even got a dual pistol gunslinger version, because the rate of fire increases do apply to las pistols for Astra Militarum Commander. So here's another option there. But I've been your host. I've been Rev619. I hope you've liked the video. If you do want to see more, do obviously subscribe, come around some more. The Discord's open, and yeah, we're getting ready to look at Dark Heresy in December as well, because that's going to be dropping on the 16th for those of you that pre-order on Owlcat's website. But that's all I've got for you today. Thank you for stopping by.